Thank you very much. And yeah, great to be here. And once again, Sandor and Kalle, thank you very much for the invitation and for giving me this opportunity to talk here today. So, I would like to talk a little bit, well, let's go back to that slide. SMR's role in fossil-free living within one generation. To make it possible to live fossil-free within one generation, that is a promise that Vattenfall has given its customers and the society. And this is something that we take very seriously. I would like to give you also a little bit about the background. Electrification. This slide is specific for Sweden, but I would say it's very similar for most countries in Central and Western Europe and many countries elsewhere. Electrification started more than 100 years ago. It went quite slowly in the beginning, as you can see. But then, during the 40s, 50s, 60s, we developed hydropower, we developed nuclear power, and we saw a quite steep increase in the electricity demand. But then, during the 1990s and lasting, I would say, more or less 30 years, very slow development, or even no development at all. So very steady demand. But what we see now is a very steep increase again. And this is the result, or this is something that has to happen in order to combat climate change. The energy industry in Sweden today is not emitting any CO2. We are already fossil-free. However, Sweden, as many other countries, has a lot of heavy industry, and that industry is emitting a lot of CO2. So the conclusion here is to decarbonize the industry, not the energy industry in the Swedish case, but the other industry. And to do that, it requires a lot of hydrogen. And to produce hydrogen in a fossil-free way, it requires a lot of fossil-free electricity. So we believe now in Sweden, and this is confirmed by several different studies, that the electricity consumption from now and until 2045, 2050 will double. And to do that, I mean, it's more or less doing what we have done in 100 years, we have to do now in 15, 20 years. So it's a really big challenge. So that's what we have in front of us. And of course, it's a big challenge, but we also feel very, committed to do this and excited about it, because it also, of course, also opens up many opportunities. So what is it that has to be decarbonized? Well, in Sweden, we have a big steel sector and metallurgical sector. Vattenfall, together with 2 steel companies in Sweden, just recently produced the world's first fossil-free steel, something that we are extremely proud about. But this is just a pilot project. To do this in a commercial scale requires a lot of energy, a lot of electricity, and fossil-free electricity, in order to produce hydrogen to put into the process. There are also other industries, mining industry, but we also see chemical industry, petrochemical industry, and of course the transport sector. That's this charging pole here that symbolizes the transport sector. But of course we are not only talking about electrical cars, we're also talking about synthetic fuel for aviation industry, for example. So this will require a lot of electricity, and what we see is that we will need all the different fossil-free energy sources that are available. In Sweden, we have a very good starting position because we have a lot of hydropower. Today, roughly 40–50% of the electricity demand is covered by hydropower. We already have nuclear power. We are building out the wind power. Even solar is getting, let's say, a position in the Swedish electricity system. But what we see, and a lot of studies also confirm this, is that just to build out wind power and solar is not enough. We need to build out also nuclear. Why do we not build out hydro? Well, because of environmental concerns. I would say it's more or less impossible to build out the hydropower in Sweden today. And I know that it's the same in many European countries. So the challenge is now to, after 30 years of not building anything, or even 40 years of not building any nuclear, start up to build some kind of, to start up a nuclear program again in Sweden. We are committed to do this. We have now a government in Sweden which is very much supporting nuclear power. And we have just recently started up our own SMR feasibility study. We are looking at deploying at least 2 small modular reactors at the Ringhals nuclear power station, where we already have 2 reactors in operation. So why are we looking at small modular reactors then? And I would like to underline also that we are not excluding large-scale reactors at this point in time. But we believe that small modular reactors are very interesting. They offer much more than just electricity. District heating, I mean heat. Sometimes we tend to believe that it's the electricity production sector that is a big problem on the continental Europe and many places in the world, the big emitter of CO2. But as a matter of fact, the heating sector is an even bigger challenge. So, for instance, building small modular reactors for district heating, I think that is something that we will see in many countries, most likely not in Sweden, but elsewhere. In Sweden, we are more looking at the electricity production and combined with hydrogen production. And as many of you know, it is possible to produce hydrogen in a more efficient way if you can also use steam or heat from a nuclear reactor. And this is an area where I think the small modular reactors can play a very important role in the future, in Sweden, but also elsewhere. Desalination of seawater is, of course, another area, which is, again, in Sweden, not a priority, but in many places in the world. There are a lot of advantages with small modular reactors, of course. I mean, the financial commitment is much smaller than for a large-scale reactor. We see also that many of the developers of different designs have really focused on simplifying the design, using less components, etc. I think that is absolutely a step or steps in the right direction. Shorter project time, construction time, instead of 7-8 years. Small modular reactors talking about 2 to 4. Let's see. I mean, it's something that has to be proven, but it sounds very promising. Passive safety systems is, of course, something that we have dreamt on for a long time. Flexible integration, which is also important in many places. I mean, it's difficult to put in a 15 or 1600 megawatt reactor in the network. 300 megawatt units, for instance, much easier to find suitable places where these can connect to the national grids. And of course, serial production. I mean, that is the key here, I think, for the small modular reactors to be able to produce them in big numbers to get the costs down. And all this is very exciting, and we are following the process very closely. And we are following the process not at least as a partner to Fermi. You know, we are co-owners and a very active partner, trying to support with the experience and the knowledge that we have from operating nuclear reactors for more than 40 years. But we also learn in the cooperation with Fermi. So some of the learnings from the Fermi project we can also bring with us to Sweden and in the project that we are developing now in Ringhals. So again, thank you very much for very good cooperation with Fermi. And now I think you also have a better understanding why Vattenfall is a partner and a very committed partner to Fermi. Thank you very much.